Welcome back to another Final Fantasy VII Theory video, where today we're going to be talking about the Promised Land. What even is the Promised Land, though? It sounds like something you'd find in a land use regulation law book. Well, from a game design standpoint, the Promised Land is kind of just used as a MacGuffin in order to get the Shinra and Avalanche in more of a deeper confrontation with each other. In a simpler story, Avalanche would simply be going after Shinra because they destroyed their hometown. But Squaresoft wanted to make the confrontation a lot more deep, so they involved Eris in the Promised Land. Shinra wants to abduct Eris because she might know where the Promised Land is, and Cloud wants to protect Eris because of their newfound relationship. So the stage is set, and the Shinra HQ raid happens, and we find out that Eris doesn't actually know where the Promised Land is, or even what it is. Fast forward to Cosmo Canyon, and Eris finally gets some kind of insight as to what the Promised Land truly is. She says that she learned a lot from the Elders, specifically about the Promised Land, and if Cloud talks to Elder Hargo, he says this: "The Promised Land. So what do you want to know? There is no one place called the Promised Land. That's what I believe." No, it does exist. You can say that. In other words, it doesn't exist for us, but it did for the ancients. The Promised Land is the resting place of the ancients. The life of the ancients is one continuous journey, a journey to grow trees and plants, raise animals, and make Mako energy. Their harsh journey continued throughout their lives. The place they returned to after their long journey, their burial land, is the Promised Land. Huh? Supreme happiness? I believe that, for the ancients, it was the moment that they were able to return to their planet. That moment when they were released from their fate and gained their supreme happiness. Now before this, the only thing that Eris knew about the Promised Land was that the Cetra eventually returned to it, and it gave them supreme happiness. Therefore, it makes total sense that the Promised Land is actually their burial place, and that the Promised Land is actually referring to some kind of heaven or afterlife. Now, in terms of the Christian symbolism that Final Fantasy VII likes to use, this makes a lot of sense as well. Eris, being a sort of Jesus figure in Final Fantasy VII, is our only gateway to the Promised Land, which makes perfect sense as a metaphor for Christian religion. In addition, Eris also says that Shinra will never make it to the Promised Land, which makes sense as a sort of metaphor for greedy businessman who cannot absolve his sins will never make it to heaven. Now that's always what I've accepted the Promised Land to be, and it makes sense in a game design standpoint and a lore standpoint. But Squaresoft kind of throws us a curveball when we go to the Temple of the Ancients. Once Cloud and Eris grab the black materia, Eris says this: "Nope, we can't use it right now. You need great spiritual power to use it." "You mean lots of spiritual energy?" "That's right. One person's power alone won't do it. Somewhere special, where there's plenty of the planet's energy." "Oh yeah, the Promised Land. The Promised Land." "No, but Sephiroth is different. He's not an ancient. He shouldn't be able to find the Promised Land." So here it kind of sounds like Eris is saying that the Promised Land is a physical place. Before we were saying that only ancients could reach the Promised Land because we were using kind of a metaphor with Jesus being able to bring us to heaven by absolving our sins. But now it just sounds like it's an actual physical place, and only Cetra can step foot in that place. And then things get even more complicated with Sephiroth later. "Do not worry, soon the girl will become part of the planet's energy. All that is left is to go north. The Promised Land waits for me over the snowy fields. There I will become a new being by uniting with the planet, as will this girl." So this actually makes a lot of sense from a game design standpoint. The game uses the Promised Land to push along the plot at the beginning and make sure that we know that the Promised Land is important. And then here, it's giving us an in-game hint saying that the Promised Land is past the snowy fields to give us an idea that we need to go to the third continent. However, from a lore standpoint, I'm nothing but confused at this point. Is the Promised Land literally the North Crater where the most Mako energy is? They did say that the Promised Land was a place abundant of Mako. Even Eris said that, not just Shinra. But at the same time, that makes it a physical place, which kind of throws everything else we've talked about out into the ocean. Now, one theory that I've heard is that the Promised Land is basically just a place of supreme happiness for each individual. So for Eris, supreme happiness is dying and going to the afterlife or the life stream, whereas the Promised Land for Sephiroth is the North Crater, because that's where the most Mako is and he can activate the black materia. That would also make sense for Shinra, as Shinra's main goal was to get the most Mako energy for money. So the question of the day is this: What do you think the Promised Land actually is? Is it A, strictly just a metaphor for the afterlife? B, the physical place of the North Crater, or another physical place, but I'm guessing it would be the North Crater? Or C, just supreme happiness for each individual, whatever that happens to be? So let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think it's A, B, or C, or do you think it's something else entirely? I really enjoyed discussing these theories with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Quick side note, I started a new casual Let's Play series of every Final Fantasy game back to back. It's a great series to watch if you need something long that you can just listen to while you're working or doing chores or whatever, because it's hour-long episodes in one giant playlist. So I'll leave that down below if you're interested. It'll be really interesting once we reach Final Fantasy VII, because we'll be talking about the lore of each scene as we play through the entire game casually, and I'll be talking about some of the behind-the-scenes, behind-the-code extras that they hid in as well. That's all we have for today. I look forward to your comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.